Crossover Day, this topic at the heart of what is going on in our state legislature right now. It's the 28th day of a 40-day legislative session. That is when Crossover Day happens. It is the day, as we just heard discussed, where bills that hope to have the best chance of turning into law must move out of the chamber they are introduced in and pass into the other chamber. So a bill introduced in the House, if it wants to have a good chance of possibly turning into law by the end of the session, by Crossover Day, it's got to get enough votes in the House to pass and then go over to the other side of our bicameral legislature and let the Senate start making its way through those bills. As you can imagine, Crossover Day, a very busy day under the Gold Dome. Lawmakers, flurry of activity. Sometimes feels like, folks, if you remind yourself of being in school when you got a big exam coming up and everyone's trying to cram a lot of studying in. That is the energy under the Gold Dome sometimes. Lawmakers stay late into the night working through a whole host of bills. The Georgia vote for a special edition was on site under the Gold Dome for Crossover Day. We sat down with the leaders of both chambers and both parties. We'll play you these interviews now. This is our extended interview with the Republican, the Senate Majority Leader Jason Anavitarte. This is our conversation that took place around dinner time on Friday, with the Majority Leader laying out some of his top priorities, not just for Crossover Day, but for the whole duration of the remainder of this session. So it is about 5:35 on Crossover Day here. Senate Majority Leader Jason Anavitarte, always appreciate your time.
Yeah, definitely. It's great to be here.
Busy day.
Yeah.
We're glad you made a little bit of a break to come talk with us.
I wouldn't do anything else on a Friday night but spend time with you, Zach.
We appreciate that. Let's get into it here because there's a lot of business to take care of today. Yep. This is the pivotal midpoint of the session, not on the calendar days, but sort of emotionally, bills live or die today in a lot of ways. Where we sit right now, the Republican caucus in the state Senate, what's your top priority as we head into the home stretch of the night?
Yeah, so just earlier today, we passed Senate Bill 410, our energy bill, to basically reduce rates for Georgians and also eliminate all the data center tax subsidies that are over $1 billion to give more money back to Georgians. So we did that a few hours ago on top of the income tax relief, property tax relief, all the things that we've set out. So recently, just a few minutes ago, we also passed our AI chatbot bill to protect kids and minors from companion AI chatbots doing harm or creating suicidal thoughts for kids. And so,
does that put an age limit on them, or does it create?
So we added an age limit on it, and set up some criteria and guidelines, similar to what we did with 351 and our social media protection bill a couple of years ago. So as of right now, we have gone through and completed our Republican Senate majority agenda, and so we're going to get it through the House and hopefully get all these bills sent to the governor.
Let's talk about affordability. It's something everybody's talking about from both parties, both chambers right now. You talk about property tax, income tax, there's efforts to reduce the tax burden there. You got to balance out the budget. If you cut taxes, you're cutting revenue coming into the state coffers. How do you offset that?
So I think, our version is a lot different than what the House has been taking up. So, we're capping assessments with local governments. Local governments and school boards across the state have done nothing but raise millage rates. I'm a former city councilman, former school board member. So property taxes, as we're going through both budgets, with income taxes and property taxes, when you're on a fixed income and you're basically know what your income is going to be, it's very hard to budget not knowing what local government is going to do. So we've had to step in because a lot of the cities and counties have not created predictability for families. And so we're hopeful that as we go through this session, that'll be addressed. I think on income taxes, getting the rate to zero is still the Senate agenda. That's our priority. But also too, we introduced a bill to drop it all the way to $399 and put more money back into blue-collar, middle-class families.
Let me ask you something that some of your Democratic colleagues have been talking about today. There have been some bills making their way through the state legislature focused on voting. One that could curb the ability to early vote countywide and reduce the early voting to specific precincts. The Senate Minority Leader, Harold Jones, pointed to that as a bill he's worried about and argued that it could reduce people's ability to access the ballot. What would you say in response to that?
So I would say to Senator Jones, and we've talked, about this before. Going back many years ago, we passed Senate Bill 202. Hard to cheat, easy to vote, and we've seen record turnout in this state. I think we've done everything we can over the last few years to make it more accessible, more transparent for a lot of voters in this state with the record turnout that we've seen. I think the enhancements that we're seeing with Georgia elections we're doing everything we can to just make sure it's transparent and it's easy for folks to get out and vote. And that's our goal at the end of the day.
Let's look ahead now. Crossover day at some point tonight. We don't know when, but it will wrap up, and then it's the home sprint to sine die. For Republicans in the state Senate, what's your top priority headed into the end of the session?
So I think as we're finishing session, it's addressing affordability, it's reigniting the American dream, making sure everybody has a chance to live out that dream, whatever it is. It's to buy a home, save money, send their kids to school, have a great education. And that's what we're going to continue to drill home. We've done that with everything we've done this session. And even as Republicans have been in the majority since 2002 under Governor Perdue, we've been very consistent. We're not, saying we're going to, make things affordable like the Democrats. And what Democrats are doing is they voted against dealing with property taxes. They don't want to give income taxes back to citizens, and they just want to see more Band-Aids. So if they're truly about affordability, they would be voting with us, but the record will speak for itself.
Last question for you. You talk about politics. It's a midterm year.
Yeah.
You got a lot of people in the Senate Republican caucus who are running for office.
Right.
How do you as leader try to keep politics from taking over the last days of the session?
Well, politics is always going to be in the last days of the session. You can't control it. It is what it is. I think we leverage the talent of all these senators to make sure that we're successful, whether they're running or not. But at the end of the day, I think all 32 of us want to make sure Georgia succeeds, we're prosperous, we're still the #1 state to do business, taxes are low, and families are successful. So that's what our goal is going to be, and we're going to make sure we win going into 2026 elections in November.
Majority Leader, thanks for your time.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
You too.
That is the leader of the Republican caucus in the state Senate, the majority party, Jason Anavitarte. We also spoke with his counterpart, a Democrat, the Senate Minority Leader, Harold Jones. Here is that conversation from Crossover Day. All right, let's dive into it here. State Senate Minority Leader Harold Jones, always appreciate you taking the time to chat with us on what I know is a busy day today.
Absolutely, certainly a busy day. Crossover Day is always a busy day, no doubt about it.
On the calendar, it's not officially the halfway point, but it is metaphorically and emotionally the midpoint of the session, I think a lot of people would say.
Absolutely, emotionally it does seem that way, no doubt.
We're talking at about 4:35 right now on Crossover Day. As you look at the state of play right now, what is your caucus's, what are Senate Democrats' top priorities to get passed today?
Well, some of our top priorities, unfortunately, have not been passed, and that was actually SB 34 and SB 94, which dealt with Consumer Utility Council and also, of course, SB 34 data centers, trying to make sure they pay their own way. So, unfortunately, they missed the cut today so far, but of course, things never completely did, but today they have missed the cut, unfortunately.
Let me ask you can I ask one follow-up, Mike?
Yes.
Let me ask you one follow-up here. You mentioned something, a little inside baseball, but I think it's important. You say, the bills are never totally dead.
Yes, correct.
What does that mean to somebody who maybe is not so familiar with the parliamentary rules
absolutely.
here?
So what can happen is you have House bills that can come over, and sometimes if they're within the same code section, you actually can add a bill to that. So you have a House bill that comes over, you can add something to it, and that could be a bill that supposedly was dead at one point in time. So a bill is never really dead till 11:59 on sine die.
But it helps if they cross over today.
It helps if they cross over today, no doubt.
One of the things we've heard from Republican lawmakers and Democratic lawmakers, you and I have talked about this, the focus on affordability.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about it. What are Senate Democrats' proposals to achieve that goal and make living in Georgia cheaper and more affordable?
Well, one of the things we already talked about was the SB 34 doing data centers. Another one is also going to be with housing, trying to actually stop a lot of your big corporations from taking over housing. So that's something that we've been talking about too. So that's another area that we've been looking at. And
that's out-of-state landlords you're talking about?
That's exactly right, out-of-state landlords coming in. And then of course also one thing that actually is in the budget this year that we've been talking about for years, and that is actually needs-based scholarships. So that was one that we've been pushing for years. To actually take that as a victory.
When Governor Kemp announced that at the State of the State, Democrats and Republicans were excited about that.
Democrats and Republicans were standing up, no doubt, and we certainly stood up because it's something we have been pushing, especially Senator Nan Orrick have been pushing that for many, many years. And so really our jaws kind of dropped when he said that, but it was a good jaw drop, quite frankly, and we enjoyed it.
Let's look in the future now. I know we're talking about 4:30 on Crossover Day in the afternoon. There's more action to come tonight. Looking ahead now, after Crossover Day, it's the sprint to sine die. What do you see as Senate Democrats' top priority headed into the back chunk of the session?
I think one of our top priorities is to make sure whatever House bills come over or Senate bills that did not pass this time do not, as far as voting is concerned, do not get any legs, because we're always concerned about voting suppression. So right now, one of our big things is to make sure none of those voting bills actually get through. So that's something that we'll be looking for. We have to see what the House maybe is bringing over. We actually was able to defeat one today, which dealt with changing 5 district attorneys to nonpartisan. So we actually was able to get that defeated today. We'll see if that comes back up. We have a motion for reconsideration with that today, but we'll be looking closely at any kind of voting bills that's going to be restricting voting.
And what in particular functionally are you worried about that could, in your view, make it harder to access the ballot?
Absolutely. One of the things that's out there right now is actually restricting advanced voting as far as putting you to a certain precinct. Right now, within your county, you can go anywhere you want to do advanced voting. There's bills out there to say, no, we're going to restrict you to a certain precinct. That's going to cause a lot of confusion with people, and it's actually going to cause people not to go to the polls, and we want every voter who wants to vote to be able to go vote.
I want to ask you this last question here. It's no secret Democrats are the minority party in the state Senate as well as the state House. Do you see your role in leadership and your party's role in the Senate as we head into sine die now more as one trying to block bills that you don't like, or more as one trying to advance and pass bills that you do like?
It's a little bit of a combination of both. I think at this point in time, we know what bills are going to get through. And so we're hoping to get some Democratic bills through today, still going into the night. But at the same time, we have an obligation and a role to make sure bills we think are going to hurt Georgians does not get through. So quite frankly, after tonight, most likely will certainly be more of a blocking pattern than necessarily a proactive pattern, unfortunately. But that's the cost of being a minority. We got to change that in November.
You bring that up. I always say last question, but you open the door to it. It is a midterm year.
Yes.
How does what happens under the Gold Dome for the remainder of this session impact your party's hopes for November?
I think what you're going to find is the messaging that goes forward from this point forward. What was and was not done is going to be key, and how we message that and tell the voters this is why you ought to put us into power. This is why you actually ought to put us as a majority, and also within the governor's seat too. So that's going to be the key. The messaging that comes out of this is going to be very key.
Minority Leader Harold Jones, thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
You just heard from both the Republican and Democratic leaders in the state Senate. Earlier today, we brought you conversations with the Republican and Democratic leaders of the state House, our coverage of politics in this critical midterm year.